Live from the Communication and Performing Arts Center at Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia, WHRO-TV and WHRO-FM, along with the Virginia Symphony Orchestra and Chorus, present Fauré's Requiem. And now, here are your hosts for this evening, Jennifer Bittinger and Dwight Davis.
Good evening, and welcome to another live concert of the Virginia Symphony Orchestra and Chorus from beautiful Regent University. I'm Dwight Davis from WHRO. My lovely co-host tonight, Jennifer Bittinger from Regent University.
Thank you, Dwight. It's exciting to be here for the final concert of this year's season.
The podiums of major orchestras around the world and also in the United States have, until the last several years, really been the domain of male conductors. Joanne is one of the groundbreakers. There are now certainly many more female conductors than there used to be, but Joanne, I would believe, would be one of those individuals that aspiring young female conductors are pointing to as an inspiration.
I can't even remember a time when I didn't think of myself as a musician. On my 7th birthday, my father gave me a very small classical guitar, and I think since that day, music has been the center of my life. It's been the way I express myself, my sanctuary, my refuge. It's always been the center of my life.
Guitar is so different than so much of the orchestra. One of the only instruments that decays the minute you start to play it. There's no sustained sound. The closest in the orchestra you would have is a piano, which is not always a part of the orchestra, and the harp. So when you think of traditional sustained instruments that are in the orchestra, guitar is not one of them. And I think it's probably an interesting origin of performance for her coming to the conducting podium and how that must influence her idea of rhythm.
For me, the classical guitar is the perfect foil to conducting an orchestra, because conducting an orchestra is a very public endeavor, and you're working with 100+ musicians all the time, and you're actively talking to them and publicly working on something. Classical guitar is an instrument that you embrace, you hold it close to your body. Very often you're playing it alone, you're playing it in a very small group. It is the most intimate, nuanced instrument that there is, capable of enormous range of color, but within a context of great intimacy. And to me, that is a wonderful, wonderful addition to my life as a conductor, and I will never give it up, because it's important to me to always remember the physical act of playing as well, because my musicians are physically playing their instruments. I'm only waving a little stick, which makes no sound, but to remember the physical process of putting one's finger down on a string and feeling the fingerboard underneath and feeling the vibrato and hearing the tone quality that you create, all of that to me is vital to understanding and always keeping close to you in mind how your musicians are creating music. As I continued to listen to classical music, I found that there was a depth there. There was a complexity that was always intriguing and always different. And I just gravitated more and more towards that. And I found that it's a world of unimaginable richness, the heritage we have of classical music from Renaissance, medieval Renaissance period up through contemporary music, that is endlessly fascinating to me. And of course, music especially written for the orchestra, which to me is the greatest instrument one could imagine. I mean, this multifaceted, multicolored group of people that create such magical sound, magical fabric of music. The composer creates something that is timeless, that we'll always have. And for me, the privilege is being the person who tries to bring that to life with the musicians. We're recreative musicians. We take what's on paper and interpret that for the audience. And that to me is a great privilege. And it's always different because, of course, notation tells you so much, but a lot of what happens between the page and the sound that enters the hall is in the hands of the interpreters, the musicians in the orchestra, and me. So it's a great privilege, it's a great adventure, trying to understand what the composer wanted, but to also reinterpret it through our personality and our voice.
You know, it's an interesting relationship that a chorus master has with a conductor. My job is sometimes to be on the podium, but a lot of the time it's to prepare the chorus to hand over to another conductor. And there can be circumstances in which that's difficult. If you happen not to have a good relationship with your conductor, that can be kind of difficult. But Joanne is such a generous collaborator in that way. She has always, I think, let the chorus know her appreciation for them as singers, how much she appreciates the music that happens when the chorus joins the orchestra. I think she's also extended a great deal of trust to us in our preparation. Joanne pays tremendous attention to what the chorus is doing. She provides them details, she wants detail from them, and has always engaged them as a full collaborator with the orchestra, and I think it's deeply appreciated by the chorus and certainly by me.
I think the most meaningful night I've ever had is the night that the Virginia Symphony played at Carnegie Hall. And even though that was 10 years ago, for me that crystallized everything about this orchestra and about the possibility of greatness, because here we were, a relatively smaller orchestra, having the audacity to go to Carnegie Hall. And I remember we played the night after the Philadelphia Orchestra played on that same stage, and we were daunted by that. But the musicians played with unbelievable beauty that night, and in a sense that I think we astonished ourselves. And I remember that as kind of the culmination of so many years of work, and also the catalyst for a beginning of continuing to work and continuing to always aspire to be the best orchestra we can. And I'll never forget that night, how they played Barber, how they played Elgar. It was a magical evening. We did a wonderful CD here with the Virginia Symphony of Music about the sea that, to me, crystallizes our region in a beautiful way. We have another wonderful CD of music about our country, a patriotic CD, which is beautiful. That night at Carnegie was captured in a CD. So there are many, many CDs that I have of the Virginia Symphony that I really prize.
Joanne, of course, is here in Virginia. She's also with the Buffalo Philharmonic. She has worked with orchestras all over the world, has recorded with orchestras all over the world, is in tremendous demand. I think the fact that she has not only been able to successfully negotiate that career in that way, but to do so with such an immense measure of grace and an immense measure of collegiality is an inspiration not only to female conductors, but I would just say to anybody who is wanting to express music in that particular way.
To work with different orchestras all over the world has taught me a lot. And I think the most important thing it's taught me is that musicians, whether they're in China or whether they're in Mexico or whether they're in New York City or whether they're in Virginia, are very much alike. And that surprised me because, of course, our backgrounds are so different. But the act of studying music, of making a lifelong pursuit of studying music, really changes us, and it shapes who we are as people. That humility about being in the presence of greatness all the time with this music. Striving for excellence, and excellence that you know you never will really attain, I think brings a kind of personality to musicians that makes them very similar. And so as much as it's unique being in Japan or Portugal or Germany, it's somehow comforting to know that music defines who we are. And it's a very, very special environment in which to work. I have to say that every time I get on the podium, I feel it's an enormous privilege, whether it's a rehearsal or performance, to be surrounded by this team dedicated to excellence and to be working with something so extraordinary, really the best legacy that we have left to us by artists who came before us. It's humbling and it's ennobling and it's completely uplifting at the same time.